Hello, welcome to another IELTS writing video. In today's lesson, we're looking at how we can start and structure sentences in our academic task 1 response on the IELTS examination. If you find this video helpful, please visit my blog at ielts.com and a new website I've started to help international ESL students find teachers and schools at eslmeet.com. To start today's lesson, I have a question, a task 1 question that I thought we could look at together and just go slowly through the steps we would need to take to respond to it effectively. Although I don't have access to the actual source material that appeared on the IELTS examination last month, this is a question that did appear in December. But as I said, the diagram and the graph that you see are two things that I had to create myself. So it's not exactly the same as the question that was seen on the examination, but the topic is very similar. Okay, the question reads, the graph and diagram below show how and to what degree water was used in Australia in 2004. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. So these are the instructions that we are to follow in this task. And we've been told that this is data pertaining to Australian water usage in the year 2004. Now first we're shown this diagram, and I hope this appears to you clearly through the video, but I'll go over the details aloud so that you can understand what it looks like. I'll also post this picture to my blog so you can maybe follow it along there a little bit more clearly. So what we see here is a house and a number of different ways water was used in Australia and to what percentage it was used in the year 2004. Now before we go to the details, let's read the description of the diagram. It says the average annual household water usage in Australia for the year 2004. So if we look at the diagram, we can see that for the lawn, 35% of overall water usage was used here. The bathroom is 23% plus toilet 26%, so that's 49% in total. So even though maybe when we first look at the diagram, we might originally think, well, the lawn makes up the largest share of overall water usage. That's actually not correct. The largest share would be the collective usage within the bathroom, which is 49%, or about half of all water usage. Cleaning, 2%. Kitchen, 5%. Laundry, 9%. So as we can see, there's basically 3 different ways in which water is used if we group them together. The bathroom, which makes up almost 50%, the lawn, which is 35%, and then other household uses, which make up roughly 15–16% if we group them like that, and that's how we're going to report them in our response. So there's the diagram. Now let's continue on to the graph. And again, I hope this comes across clearly in the video, but I will post it to the blog. The graph reads liters of water use per average household per day in Australia in the year 2004. So now here we can see that our y-coordinate is talking about the liters of water used per average household per day. And we can see that the figures are up around 400, between 400 and 350 liters per day in Australia in 2004. Along the x-coordinate, we have the months January to December. And there's nothing super outstanding about the graph itself. As you can see, it just makes sort of a minor depression, and then kind of raises again towards the end of the year. And of course, in Australia, the hottest months are between perhaps November and February, and that seems to coincide with water usage. So I don't know. I guess perhaps that maybe water usage grows, during the hotter months because more is used to maybe wash with or to water the lawn with, and then during the months of May, June, July, August, September, the figure depresses and remains quite constant. So when we go to explain this trend in our response, we're going to describe the overall trend as being not super outstanding, nothing too extreme. It's basically just starting. It kind of dips modestly, and then towards the end of the year, it starts to climb again. But throughout the year, the figures are not too extreme, between 350 and about 410 liters of water per day per household. Okay, now, so we've looked at the two sources that we're going to be writing about. Now, I want to go over very quickly the structure that we're going to use to respond to these and to describe these two sources. So basically, your Ielts response is going to have between 9 and perhaps 10, 11, or 12 sentences. Sometimes it depends on what kind of data you're given and how much time you need and how many sentences you need to explain it. But roughly 9 or 10 sentences is going to be what we're aiming for, and that will put us at just above 150 words. And it will also be a structure that we can complete within 18 minutes, which provides us with 2 minutes at the end with which we can review what we have written. So what I've done here is, as you can see on the left-hand side, there are some numbers, 1, 2, and it goes all the way down to, I believe, number 9. And each of these numbers is referring to a sentence within your Task 1 response. Now, next to each number, I've put some suggested sentence starters, or even small parts of a sentence that you can use to help explain the data that you are talking about. So now, of course, these are not, you don't have to use these phrases, but these are just a few of the suggestions that that I will share with you today. Now, in the first sentence, we want to give sort of a very broad sort of background as to what kind of data we are being shown. Is it a graph? Is it a diagram? Is it a chart? Is it a table? What kind of information is being shown to us? And this sentence can be started something like this. So and then if it's a graph, so the graph, and if you have two sources like we do today, we would maybe say the diagram and graph illustrate, and then whatever it is that they're talking about. So today we're referring to the average use of water in Australian homes in 2004. So we would say something along the lines of The diagram and graph illustrate water usage in the average Australian home during the year of 2004. Or, we don't have to use illustrate, we could use depict, explain, show, some of these sorts of words. So let's go ahead and write the first sentence of our task 1 response. And I think we'll probably just follow, what I had just said. So the diagram and graph illustrate water usage in the average Australian home during the year 2004. Okay, that's our opening sentence. So we have just relayed to our examiner exactly what kind of data we're looking at and what the data shows. Now, we haven't talked about any of the details of the data, but we have just set up the task 1 response for the details that are to come later. Now that we've done that, our second sentence is a sentence that we can use to show the relationship between the two pieces of data if we're given two sources like we have been here. So, if you're given a table and a graph, there might be a certain trend that is created between the two of them. So in a case like that, you might want to start your sentence with something like, the overall trend created between the two sources grows over the course of the year, or declines, or is unstable, or these sorts of things. You're just trying to explain what the two sources together show. So the overall trend created between the two sources shows, or illustrates, or perhaps you could start, the relationship between the two sources appears to show. Maybe that there's a positive correlation between them, which means they move in the same direction, or there's a negative correlation between them, which means perhaps one source moves in one direction, the other source moves in the opposite direction. Or perhaps you could start the diagram shows whatever, comma, while the graph shows, and then whatever the graph shows. And that's probably what we'll use here. Or perhaps even the two sources illustrate how, and then whatever, or why something happens, or what sort of thing happens. So just last week I was in a class and we were working on a response that was based on two diagrams that depicted an irrigation system for tomatoes, and it explained how two different parts of this system worked. So when we wrote our response, we wrote something similar to this. The two sources illustrate how the process of irrigating tomatoes in a dry landscape works, or something like that. So let's write our sentence here. Now we're talking about a diagram and a graph, and each source tells us something a little different about the information, but they both pertain to the same core, which is water usage in Australia. So let's write, the diagram details how the water was used. I'm using was because this is in 2004. It's something that has started and finished. Was used, while the chart depicts to what quantity, let's say. So our diagram tells us how the water was used. It was used to water the lawn, it was used in the bathroom, it was used for household chores, while the chart depicts to what quantity, so how much water was used from January to December. Okay, that's the relationship between the two data sources. Now, we've finished our two opening sentences, and these two sentences are the introduction to the rest of the work that we're going to do. So in the following sentences, we're going to skip a line and start a new paragraph. So sentence number 3 now marks a point in our writing when we're going to talk about the details that are shown in the diagram. So we're going to start talking about the diagram. When we finish that, then we're going to start another new paragraph, which will be the third paragraph in our response that talks about the details as seen in the graph that we are given. So, how do we start this paragraph to talk about the diagram? Well, when you're given two sources, there are a number of ways that you can start this paragraph. So we could start with according to the graph, according to the diagram, according to the pie chart, comma, and then you could state the broad trend that you see in this data. So according to the chart, comma, buses come regularly every morning in Shanghai, or whatever the broad trend is in the source that you're given. Or perhaps looking at the chart, looking at the diagram, it is clear that, and then whatever, or maybe it is maybe even it is not entirely clear that, depending on what kind of information you're given. The diagram shows a clear, and then whatever, or the chart shows a clear growth over the period of 6 months, or the table shows a clear cyclical pattern if you're talking about a bus timetable. Something like that would be fine. It appears the diagram outlines a upward trend, or the graph outlines a downward trend, or whatever. I think that's the end of the So here we're talking about the diagram, and let's start with what we have here. According to the diagram, so I'll take all this away. According to the diagram, comma, now we want to state, like the largest figure, or kind of the sort of the part of the information that that is the majority of what is being shown. So according to the diagram, the vast majority of the water consumed in the average Australian home is used, as we said, in the bathroom. Now, I'm going to stick in the figure here too. According to the diagram, the vast majority, comma, 40, let me just get that diagram out here again. I think it was 49%, was it? 23% plus 26%, 49%, the vast majority, 49%, comma, of the water consumed in the average Australian home is used in the bathroom. Okay? Now, the way that I've used this here is I have surrounded the figure with two commas, which makes your reader pause one moment when they're reading it. So according to the diagram, the vast majority, 49%, of the water consumed in the average Australian home is used in the bathroom. So here's just an idea for you, a way that you can kind of share the value of what you're talking about without breaking the reader's fluency while they read the sentence. Okay, so we've shared, this is the largest share of the water that is used in the average home in Australia. Now, in the next sentence, we want to break this down a little bit more, and to show that this 49% is actually, separated in the diagram into two different parts. So one deals with the water used just for the toilet, and the other deals with the water that is used for the other things that you do in the bathroom. So that's what we're going to do in our next sentence. We're going to take the largest share and we're going to break it down a little bit more. Okay, half of this pertains to, which we will use here, or maybe, depending on what you're talking about, you might use phrases like, this figure falls, and all of these should be followed by to. This figure falls to 6%. This figure falls to whatever it is, 30% or 3,000 people, or depending on what you're looking at. This figure jumps to. This figure declines slightly to. This figure plateaus at. We can also change figure to maybe this number or even maybe this value. There's a variety of ways that we can write this. Now, commonly, students make mistakes with the preposition they choose to follow these phrases with. So this figure falls by you can use, but of course now we're changing the meaning of the sentence. So for example, if I say this figure falls to 8%, that means that the new value of the figure is 8%. But if I say this figure falls by 8%, that means that the new figure is 8% lower than the old figure. Okay, so don't make mistakes with these little words. They're very important. Now, if, sometimes even students make the mistake of using words like at. I mean, at has a totally different meaning. If we say this value falls at 8%, that means that when the value got to 8%, at that point it started to fall. So be careful with the words as you use them. Okay, plateaus at, grows modestly to. Modestly, good word to know. You could say it falls modestly to, it rises modestly to, modestly is a great word just to describe those small little changes that occur, in your source. Spikes at. So if the value goes up very sharply and then maybe comes down a little bit, this is a spike. Spikes at. Dips to, which means falls to. Swells to, gets bigger. Shrinks to, gets smaller. Bottoms at, which would be the lowest value in the graph or whatever you're being shown. Okay, I hope a few of those phrases are helpful. Now let's go back to our sentence here, and we were going to write about the bathroom value and how that can be split into two different sections as well. So half of this pertains to, I'm just going to change this a little bit. Let's say over, the value for the toilet was 26%, if I'm not mistaken here, 26%. So let's say over half of this amount services the toilet alone, while the remaining half, we'll say, addresses other toiletry needs. Okay? Now, one thing I'll just point out is words like this are very important because these are words that create cohesion in your writing. So as you can see, sentence number 4 refers to the sentence that we wrote in number 3. Over half of this amount. What amount are we talking about? We're talking about the 49% that we initially spoke of in sentence number 3. So over half of this amount services the toilet alone, while the remaining half addresses the other toiletry needs. Okay. Now, although you could share a value for this and say, that amount is 23%, I'm not going to do that because we don't need to address, every single small detail, and it can sound kind of robotic if you you know, if you say this value is this value is this value is this value is this. So we're just going to try to make this as fluent as we can and as easy to read as we can. So we've already mentioned that they make up 49% together, and now we're mentioning that it's about half toilet and half other bathroom necessities. Okay, let's go to sentence number 5. Now, so here I've written more of the same, which just means that, you know, we're going to continue talking about the more minor details in our data source. So let's see, we had some water that's going to be used for the lawn. That's the next biggest thing. So let's talk about that in this sentence. So I recall it was 35%. Let's double check here. 35% was used for the lawn. So we can start this sentence with perhaps something like the next most major use of water is for watering the lawn. And I'm just going to put in comma, a task that makes up 35% of total water usage. Okay? The next most major, again, cohesion. When we read this, we know there was information that came before it. So this creates a sense of fluency when the reader reads this piece. The next most major use of water is for watering the lawn, a task that makes up 35% of total water usage. And on to sentence 6, which I've just noted. This we don't have to have a sixth sentence. We don't have to have another sentence in this paragraph if we don't need it. But if we do, as we do here, we're going to add one, and maybe even another sentence if it's required, depending on how much information you have to present in this paragraph. So for us, we only have a few more things we have to talk about. There was laundry water usage, kitchen water usage, and general cleaning. And each of those, had rather small percentages. So I recall the laundry was 9%, the kitchen was 5%, and the general cleaning was 2%. So let's just start with something like laundry, kitchen work, and general cleaning. Amass much smaller percentages. Okay? Laundry, kitchen work, and general cleaning amass. Amass is another good word to know when you need to group a few smaller figures together. So amass just means kind of collectively they are much smaller percentages. And we can even just stick in the percentages here. So at now laundry was 9%, kitchen work was 5%, and general cleaning was 2%. And I'm going to stick in the word respectively. And the word respectively just means that we've given a list of figures in the beginning of the sentence here. And we've given a list of values for them at the end of the sentence. And all we're saying is that the order of these match the order of these. So 9% matches with laundry, 5% matches with kitchen work, and 2% matches with general cleaning. Okay, so that finishes the paragraph in our response that describes the first data source in detail. And from here, we move on to a second paragraph, which will describe the graph. So I have a printing of the graph in front of me here, which I'm going to refer to you. So as you're listening, I hope you have a copy of it on the screen with you as well, so that you can follow along. Now, I have skipped a line. As you can see, we're going to start our new paragraph. So this is paragraph number 3. And this is sentence number 7 in the response. As with the paragraph that came before it, we're going to start this paragraph with sort of a broad sort of sentence that describes the overall trend that we see through the graph. And this should be quite easy for us to write because the trend is, as I was saying, there's nothing particularly strange about it. It just sort of starts slightly higher than in the months of June, July, and August, and September, and where it lowers, and then it goes back up again at the end of the year. So some ways that we could start this sentence are similar to the ways that we could have started, the sentence in the first paragraph describing the diagram. So we have the appears to, and I've just put here the same as the previous paragraph, just, the sentence structures are the same. So this could be the graph appears to, or the chart appears to, or the the table shows, the table depicts, or as the graph makes clear. Okay, so for us, we're just going to talk about the diagram. So the diagram appears to fall gradually. As if you remember from before, we had the word modestly. We could put that in here too. Fall modestly. Let's say from a January high of 410 liters of water per household to 310 perhaps 340, not 310 liters in May. Okay, the diagram appears to fall gradually from a January high of 410 liters of water per household to 340 liters in May. And we don't need to talk about all the details, for February, March, April, because they follow the same pattern. They're all going down into May. So really the minor details we're talking about here, the key areas are January, the middle of the year, and December, because that's where the changes occur. Okay. Let's see here. Number 8, sentence number 8. More describing parts, trends, values. So we're going to use this sentence to talk about the period of depression in the middle of the year, as you can see, between about May and about around September, when water use goes down the most. So let's refer to this depression, and this depression is referring to the drop that we talked about in the first sentence. This depression dips slightly lower through June and July, but appears to recover, we'll say, modestly, we'll use the word, in August, and climb through the rest of the year. Okay? So if we look back at the sentence, this depression dips slightly lower through June and July, but appears to recover modestly in August and climb through the rest of the year. And we come to the last sentence in this paragraph, which shares the value that is given for the final point in the graph. And often this is compared to the first value in the graph. So we will just slightly comment on how December compares to January. But in this case, of course, this is something that's somewhat cyclical, so December and January are rather similar in value. So We could start this with stating December's value is, we'll say just a hair lower than January's. And then comma at roughly, and that looks about, I don't know, it's hard to say, I'd say about 405, maybe 405 liters per household per day. Okay, so December's value is just a hair lower than January's at roughly 405 liters per household per day. And that would conclude our task 1 response. If we look back though just to the first sentence in this paragraph, I know some of you are going to be questioning me why this sentence sort of gets more into the minor details and doesn't provide a more broad look at what the graph is doing. And I mean, it's just when I look at this graph, it seems so uneventful. This graph doesn't really do much. It just sort of goes down and up, that I kind of just went directly into the minor details without kind of giving an overview of what the graph is doing. But if we were to do that, we could share something like this. So, oh, and I wrote diagram and I should have written graph. Well, that's a mistake. The graph appears to show downward and upward growth over the course of the year. And then we just change this from fall gradually to it begins with gradual fall. Begins with a gradual fall. Let me just say gradually out. Okay, so if that maybe helps in keeping with my other lessons, I will just change it a little bit this way. But I think the other way would have worked fine as well, because I mean this comment is a little bit, you know, it's not so necessary. It just looks kind of, the graph looks too simple really. But okay, now let's put these sentences together and read the response from the beginning. So if I can get rid of these numbers without hurting everything. Okay, here we go. So from the top it reads, the diagram and graph illustrate water usage in the average Australian home during the year 2004. The diagram details how the water was used, while the chart depicts to what quantity. So that's our opening paragraph. Then we get into our paragraph about the diagram. According to the diagram, the vast majority, 49% of the water consumed in the average Australian home is used in the bathroom. Over half of this amount services the toilet alone, while the remaining half addresses other toiletry needs. The next most major use of water is for watering the lawn, a task that makes up 35% of total water usage. Laundry, kitchen work, and general cleaning amass much smaller percentages, at 9%, 5%, and 2% respectively. Okay, now we get into our third paragraph, talking about the graph that we are shown. The graph appears to show downward and upward growth over the course of the year. It begins with a gradual fall from a January high of 410 liters of water per household to 340 liters in May. This depression dips slightly lower through June and July, but appears to recover modestly in August. And climbs through the rest of the year. December's value is just a hair lower than January's, at roughly 405 liters per household per day. Okay, now I just want to very quickly do a word count to show you that this pattern should put you, between 150 and 180 words. You don't want to go much higher than that, because remember, you have to do this within 18 minutes, so it's got to be a structure that's quite fast to complete. So here we're sitting at 186 words, which is okay. And the last thing I want to do is to zoom out and show you the overall way that the writing is structured. So if I take that down to 20, and if I insert a break here very quickly, okay, and if I zoom out, let's take this down to 200, okay, zoom out a bit more, 250. Okay, I think you can see it pretty clearly there. So as you can see, we have the first paragraph, we skip a line, we've written the second paragraph, skip another line, and we've written the third paragraph, and that would be our response to this task 1 question. So I hope that video was helpful. If you have any questions, please comment, and please rate my video too if you don't mind. Thank you. And good luck with your studies. Thank you for listening.